Welcome to the Indian Heritage Centre. The Indian Heritage Centre, or IHC as we call it, is a focal point for the interpretation and preservation of Singapore's diverse Indian heritage within the context of the Southeast Asian region. It was envisioned as a place of belonging for the community and for the expression of their cultural heritage. A place that would record the community's history, its triumphs and tribulations. Join us to discover how the long history of Indians in Singapore is featured in our permanent exhibition. We will also be sharing curatorial insights that went into the making of this exhibition to give you some behind-the-scenes perspectives. So look out for QR codes placed at the entrance of every gallery to follow the full tour. We hope you enjoy your visit to the centre. Let me begin the tour by first introducing our precinct and our building. The IHC is located within the historic district popularly known as Little India. Bounded by Serangoon and Sungai roads as well as Jalan Besar, the Little India precinct spans 13 hectares and is home to 900 conserved buildings. The precinct's arterial thoroughfare Serangoon Road is one of the earliest roads built in Singapore. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, the precinct was associated with agricultural activity, brick making, lime quarrying and cattle rearing among others. The Indian community started to settle in the area back in the 19th century when they were employed to work at the brick kilns, in the cattle trade and in the construction and operation of the racecourse among others. Despite the predominance of the Indian community, the Little India precinct was also a reflection of Singapore's cosmopolitan society as Europeans, Eurasians, Chinese and Malays also established businesses in the area. The neighbourhood still retains this multicultural character as evident in the places of worship, street names and in its people. Around the world, the Indian diaspora is the product of several crossings. Numbering over 28 million, these communities, found today in nearly all countries, are overwhelmingly an amalgamation of colonial-era immigrants, their descendants, contemporary migrant professionals, transient semi-skilled, as well as unskilled workers. The trajectories of Indian migration and settlement in Singapore parallel this wider narrative. The 2010 census of Singapore registered the size of the Indian community as 9.2% of the total resident population. Several features of the Indian community in Singapore make it distinctive even by global standards. While the Indian diaspora in the West today are largely the outcome of post-World War II migration, and those in the former European colonies are mostly descendants of immigrants who arrived in the 19th and early 20th centuries, in Singapore, the Indian diaspora is a accumulation of flows extending almost continuously over a period of 200 years. Even more because of its position in Southeast Asia, the diaspora here is intrinsically connected to even older trajectories of Indian movement that predated the arrival of Europeans. Collectively, these myriad journeys have produced the vibrant and multi-layered tapestry of Indian heritage in Singapore. Singaporean Indians include British colonial subjects who migrated from the subcontinent, Straits-born Indians, as well as migrants who arrived in the post-independence era. Today, Indian heritage in Singapore is marked by a majority Tamil culture flanked by myriad other sub-ethnic communities mirroring the diversity of the subcontinent. The permanent exhibition will take you on a voyage through times past to tell the stories of sojourners and settlers, taking you from pre-modern Southeast Asia to modern Singapore. Pursuing themes of people, trade and religion, the IHC is unique in providing perspectives on interactions between South and Southeast Asia as a preface to the Singapore Indian experience. For a 21st century museum like IHC, Reconstructing the history of centuries past through a visual experience is a huge challenge. To situate the historical and cultural interactions between South and Southeast Asia, this gallery presents an amalgamation of important artifacts and textiles from the IHC collection, the collection of the Asian Civilizations Museum, and others. From archaeological evidence to relics of religion and trade exchanges, I would like to share with you 5 highlights from this gallery. Singapore, Singapura or Temasek was an important trading port integral in the trading network in the region during the 14th century CE. Various types of industries were in operation then, including gold, copper, bronze, glass recycling and pottery making. Archaeological finds dating to this period are divided between Chinese and local Malay style pottery with small quantities of glass, gold, copper, lead and damar or tree resin used as incense, and an interesting find is an Indian Carnelian bead dating to the late 13th century CE. This is an outstanding Buddha head depicted with a full round face, downcast eyes, arched eyebrows, raised urna, bow-shaped mouth, aquiline nose, distended earlobes and snail shell hair curls turned clockwise covering the head and Ushnisha. The overall rendition is a superlative example of the Buddhist art of central Java. It closely resembles the seated Dhyani Buddhas that punctuate the circumambulatory terraces of Borobudur. Borobudur, one of the greatest Buddhist monuments in the world, is a colossal late 8th to early 9th century CE stupa-like edifice built in the form of a 3-dimensional mandala. Stylistically, the facial features of the Buddha sculptures of Borobudur remain inspired by the great classical style of the Guptas in the Indian subcontinent. Immaculate provenance is an important consideration for most collecting institutions of the 21st century. This piece can be traced to the collection of Karl Ernst Osthaus, an eminent German collector, art patron and philanthropist who in 1902 founded the Folkwang Museum of Hagen. A visionary collector and pioneer, this Javanese head of Buddha was acquired by him in the early 20th century. The base seen here was originally designed for display at his museum. Indian literary traditions were adapted and gained popularity in Southeast Asia. Indian epics such as the Ramayana and the Mahabharata form a large part of the repertoire for performing artists to this day. Wayang Kulit or shadow play, Wayang Wong or dance theatre, and Wayang Topeng or mask play from Java and Bali, dance dramas of Thailand and the Royal Ballet of Cambodia, for example, all predominantly feature stories from these Hindu epics, alongside legends and myths of local origin. One of the oldest puppet theatre traditions in Indonesia, Wayang Kulit, was performed in the royal courts of Java as early as the 9th century CE, with episodes from the Ramayana and Mahabharata as their most common themes. Seen here is a puppet representing a central character from the Mahabharata. Arjuna, the third of the 5 Pandava brothers, who is one of the heroes of the epic, is depicted with light skin, a slender body, pointed nose and downcast eyes, which represent his dignity, self-control, nobility and humility. A typical Wayang Kulit performance could include over 100 individual characters, all of which have their distinctive characteristics presented to the audience through their features, colouring and size. From the early centuries of the Common Era, India exported handmade textiles to Southeast Asia in exchange for aromatics and spices, and by the early 16th century, these textiles were traded as far as Indonesia and Japan in the east and Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, Egypt and West Africa in the west. In fact, when European trading companies arrived in the region from the 16th century onwards, They found that Indian textiles were the set currency for the procurement of spices. Some of the earliest Indian trade textiles were the Gujarati patola or doubly cut silk cloths and Cambay cloths. The patola cloths were stitched into costumes and worn as trousers, sash and head cloths by royalty and courtiers in Indonesia. Coromandel cloths such as chintz and kalamkari were coveted, while the dodot were large cloths worn as ceremonial dress by members of the Javanese royalty on top of their patola pants. Although these textiles were made in India, the motifs found on many of the trade textiles were often based on local sources. The diamond-shaped pattern called Gering Singh, the flowing water pattern or Tirtha Teja, figurative motifs of geese and dancing girls, and flower pattern block printed designs were produced for Southeast Asian markets. This Baju Panjang or jacket is a hand-painted, modern and resist-dyed cotton one incorporating elaborate floral motifs. Early Christians arrived in Southeast Asia via Central and South Asia as early as the 7th century CE. There was a revival in the influence of Christianity with the spread of European imperialist networks across Asia in the 16th and 17th centuries, and one of these networks was the Portuguese settlements which originated in Goa and spread to Malacca and Macau. Many missionaries were also sent from India to Singapore during the 19th and early 20th centuries to serve the educational and religious needs of the Christian communities here. The Portuguese conquest of territories in the east and west coasts of Africa, Sri Lanka, Goa, Macau, Japan, and the east coast of Brazil saw the advent of Christian art in these regions. Foremost among these were intricate ivory images of Christian deities which were popular in Portugal and Spain as well as in their Asian-controlled territories. Ivory images produced in Goa were typically Christian figures of the divine, with Jesus and the Virgin Mary being most common. Saints were often portrayed too. In fact, from the 16th century onwards, such images were produced in Asia for export to Europe. This is an immaculate example of an Indo-Portuguese ivory image of Madonna or Our Lady of Immaculate Conception. The gilded decoration on her hair and borders of the dress are grandiose. She stands with her right knee bent on a cloud of cherubs and her palms together in a gesture of prayer. She appears European at first glance with her serene light eyes, aquiline nose and broad face framed by the long blonde tresses. However, do note that she is wearing gold earrings, reflecting the practice in the Indian subcontinent of adorning the deity.